The massive Dominion fleet hung in the darkness beyond Earth's solar system like sleeping giants. Admiral Thane stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, watching the blue and green worlds spinning slowly on the main screen. His forearms moved across the control panels with practiced ease as he reviewed the data streams flowing in from the scout ships. Another primitive world, he muttered to himself. In his 200 years of service to the Dominion, he had seen this same scene play out hundreds of times. A young species, barely out of their home system, thinking they were alone in the universe. They were always wrong. Commander Willis approached from behind, his boots clicking on the metal deck plates. "Sir, the reconnaissance teams have completed their survey. Captain Reynolds is ready to present his findings." Thane nodded and turned away from the screen. The bridge of the Eternal Conquest was massive, filled with dozens of officers monitoring screens and controlling systems. Red lights bathed everything in an ominous glow. The air hummed with the power of engines that could crack moons in half. "Bring him up," Thane ordered. A few minutes later, Captain Reynolds entered the bridge carrying a data tablet. He was younger than most officers, with bright green eyes that showed eagerness to prove himself. This was his first major assessment mission, and he wanted to make a good impression. "Admiral, the planetary survey is complete," Reynolds began, activating a holographic display above the main tactical table. Earth appeared in miniature, rotating slowly with white clouds drifting across blue oceans. "The species calls themselves humans. They inhabit all major land masses and have achieved basic space travel." Thane studied the hologram with interest. "Population? Approximately 8 billion individuals, sir. They are divided into nearly 200 separate nations, each with their own government and military forces. Most interesting is their tendency toward constant warfare. Our monitoring stations detected over 40 active conflicts during the observation period." "Barbaric," Willis commented, shaking his head. "How can they achieve space travel while still fighting among themselves?" Reynolds touched his tablet, and the hologram changed to show various human cities. Tall buildings stretched toward the sky. Vehicles moved along roads like tiny insects, and aircraft crossed the skies in regular patterns. Their technology is roughly equivalent to what we had 1,000 years ago. Nuclear weapons, primitive, computers, basic satellite networks, nothing that poses any threat to Dominion forces. The Admiral walked around the tactical table, studying the projection from different angles. He had conquered worlds far more advanced than this one. "What about their military capabilities?" "Limited, sir. Their largest nations maintain armies numbering in the millions, but they use chemical projectile weapons and simple explosives. Their space-based assets consist of a few orbital stations and some communication satellites. No energy weapons, no shield technology, no faster-than-light capability." Thane smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "And their response to first contact protocols?" "Unknown, sir. Standard procedure would be to broadcast surrender demands and await their response. Based on historical data, species at this technology level typically surrender within 6 to 12 hours of first contact. Resistance is usually limited to isolated military units who refuse to accept reality." The Admiral moved to his command chair, a massive throne-like structure in the center of the bridge. "Any unusual characteristics we should be aware of?" Reynolds consulted his tablet again. "The humans do show some interesting traits, sir. They appear to be more aggressive than most species we encounter. Their entertainment media is filled with stories about warfare and conflict. They seem to actually enjoy fighting, which is quite rare among civilized races." "Enjoyable for them, perhaps," Willis said with amusement, "but irrelevant when faced with Dominion firepower." "Indeed," Thane agreed. "What is your recommendation, Captain?" Reynolds straightened his uniform and spoke with confidence. "Sir, I recommend this operation be classified as a Category C pacification. Minimal force required, low risk to Dominion, assets, suitable for training purposes. A single battle group should be more than sufficient to secure complete planetary surrender." The Admiral considered this assessment. Category C operations were routine matters, usually assigned to junior officers who needed combat experience. The planets involved were so weak that resistance was almost non-existent, perfect for breaking in new commanders. Very well, Thane decided. Colonel Webb will command the pacification force. This will be his first independent operation. Marcus. Webb was 28 years old and had been waiting for this opportunity his entire career. He came from a military family that had served the Dominion for generations. His father had conquered 12 worlds. His grandfather had led the assault on the Calarian home system. Now it was his turn to prove himself worthy of the family name. When the orders came through, Webb was in his quarters studying tactical manuals. He had read every battle report from the last 50 years, memorizing the strategies that led to quick victories. Earth would be his first command, and he intended to make it flawless. The force assigned to Webb consisted of 1 dreadnought, 3 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, and 40 support vessels. It was more than enough firepower to glass the entire planet if necessary, though such extreme measures were rarely required. Most species saw sense once they understood the hopelessness of their situation. Sir, his aide, Lieutenant Barnes, entered the quarters. The fleet is ready to depart for Earth. All ships report ready status. Webb closed his tactical manual and stood. He was tall for his species, with the pale blue skin and silver eyes common among the Dominion military class. His uniform bore no decorations yet, but that would change soon enough. Excellent, Webb replied. Signal the fleet to begin jump sequence. Time to show these humans what real civilization looks like. The journey to Earth took 3 days. During that time, Webb reviewed the intelligence reports repeatedly, looking for any detail that might give him an advantage. The more he read, the more confident he became. These humans were primitive beyond belief. They still used fossil fuels for energy. They had never developed artificial intelligence. Their fastest ships required months to travel between planets. It would barely qualify as a military exercise. When the Dominion fleet finally arrived at Earth, Webb ordered them to take positions just outside the range of human sensors. The plan was simple and had worked on hundreds of other worlds. First, reveal their presence gradually to avoid panic, then broadcast surrender demands in the local languages. Finally, demonstrate their superior firepower with a few precision strikes. If the natives proved stubborn, "Sir," the communications officer reported, "we are receiving multiple transmissions from the planet. Their military forces appear to be mobilizing." Webb smiled. This was expected behavior. Every species tried to mount some kind of defense when first contacted. It was almost touching how they clung to hope even when facing impossible odds. "Let them mobilize," he ordered. "It will make our demonstration more effective when they realize how futile their efforts are." What Colonel Webb did not know was that Earth had been preparing for this moment for over 70 years. Colonel Webb stood at the center of his command bridge, watching Earth grow larger on the main display. The blue marble hung in space like a jewel, unaware that its fate had already been decided. Around him, dozens of officers prepared for what should be a routine first contact scenario. "Communications, are we ready to broadcast?" Webb asked. "Yes, sir," replied Lieutenant Hayes from her station. "We have prepared surrender demands in the top 12 human languages. The message explains the benefits of joining the Dominion and the consequences of resistance." Webb nodded. This was standard procedure, refined over centuries of conquest. Most species understood the logic immediately. Why fight when you could simply accept a better way of life under Dominion rule? The few who chose resistance rarely lasted more than a few hours. "Begin transmission on all frequencies," Webb ordered. The message went out across space, carried by powerful transmitters that could reach every corner of Earth's communications network. It was broadcast in English, Chinese, Spanish, Russian, and 8 other major human languages. The content was simple and direct. "People of Earth," the message began, "you are now under the protection of the Galactic Dominion. Your world has been selected for integration into our peaceful empire. Surrender all military assets immediately and prepare for occupation. Compliance will result in minimal disruption to your daily lives. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your civilization. You have 24 hours to respond." On Earth, the message reached every radio, television, and internet connection simultaneously. In Washington, D.C., President Johnson sat in the Situation Room surrounded by military advisors and intelligence officials. The room fell silent as the alien transmission played through the speakers. "My God," whispered Secretary of Defense Miller. "It's really happening." General Patricia Hayes, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, remained calm as chaos erupted around her. She had been preparing for this moment for her entire career. Her father had briefed her on the possibility when she first received her commission 30 years ago. Her grandfather had helped establish the protocols during the Cold War. "Activate Condition Omega," Hayes ordered quietly. Around the world, similar scenes played out in command centers and government buildings. In Moscow, Beijing, London, and dozens of other capitals, military leaders who had spent decades preparing for this exact scenario began implementing plans that most of their own governments didn't know existed. Back on the Dominion flagship, Colonel Webb waited patiently for Earth's response. His tactical officer, Major Brooks, monitored human communications networks for signs of panic or immediate surrender. "Sir, we are detecting massive increases in communication traffic across the planet," Brooks reported. "Multiple governments appear to be coordinating some kind of response." "Expected behavior," Webb replied. "They probably think they can negotiate better terms. Most primitive species try this approach before accepting reality." What Webb didn't realize was that the increased communications traffic wasn't panic or desperate negotiation attempts. It was the activation of the most comprehensive defense network ever created by any species in the galaxy. Deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain in Colorado, General Hayes descended in an elevator that had been built in 1962 but upgraded with technology that wouldn't be invented by most civilizations for another 1,000 years. The elevator stopped at a level that didn't appear on any official blueprints. The doors opened to reveal the Earth Defense Command Center, a facility so classified that only 100 people on the planet knew of its existence. Banks of monitors covered every wall, displaying tactical information from around the solar system. Officers wearing uniforms without insignia worked at stations controlling systems that officially didn't exist. "General, all stations report ready," announced Colonel Anderson, the facility's operations director. "Global defense grid is online. Fleet assets are moving to attack positions. Ground forces are deploying to predetermined locations." Hayes took her position at the central command chair. Around her, three-dimensional displays showed the positions of every ship in the Dominion fleet, tracked by sensors they had no idea existed. Earth's true defensive capabilities were revealed for the first time in over 70 years. "Signal hour. Response," Hayes ordered. On the Dominion flagship, Lieutenant Hayes received an incoming transmission from Earth. She quickly translated the message and displayed it on the main screen for Colonel Webb to read. "To the forces threatening Earth," the message began, "we have received your surrender demands and reject them completely. Earth stands ready to defend itself against all aggressors. We suggest you reconsider your position." The bridge fell silent. Webb read the message 3 times, unable to believe what he was seeing. In all of Dominion history, no primitive species had ever responded this way to first contact. "They reject our terms?" Webb asked, his voice showing confusion rather than anger. "Are we certain this message is authentic?" "Yes, sir," Lieutenant Hayes confirmed. "The transmission came from their primary military command structure. Multiple governments have issued similar statements." Major Brooks looked up from his sensor station. "Sir, we are detecting unusual energy signatures from the planet's surface, some kind of power sources that weren't visible during our initial scans." Webb moved to the tactical display, studying the new information. Strange readings were appearing all across Earth's surface and in orbital space. Power signatures that shouldn't exist on a primitive world were lighting up his sensors like stars. "Run a detailed scan of their military installations," Webb ordered. "I want to know exactly what we're dealing with." The results of the scan changed everything. Hidden beneath mountains, disguised as civilian buildings, and concealed in underground facilities were weapon systems that rivaled Dominion technology. Massive railgun installations emerged from camouflaged positions. Orbital platforms that had appeared to be simple communication satellites revealed themselves to be heavily armed battle stations. "How is this possible?" Webb asked, staring at the display in shock. "Our reconnaissance was complete. We surveyed this planet for months." Admiral Thane's voice crackled over the communication system from the main fleet. "Colonel Webb, what is your status? We are detecting some unusual readings from your area." Webb struggled to find words. Everything he had been taught about primitive species was wrong. Everything the intelligence reports had told him about Earth was false. The humans hadn't just rejected Dominion terms. They had been waiting for this moment. "Admiral," Webb finally responded, "I think we may have underestimated this species." On Earth, General Hayes watched the alien fleet through her displays. 73 years of preparation were about to be tested. Since 1947, when the first extraterrestrial probe had been detected entering the solar system, humanity had been getting ready for this day. Every war, every conflict, every military advancement had been building toward this moment. The Cold War had been cover for the largest military buildup in human history. The space race had been about more than national pride. The Internet had been designed as a military communication system for global defense coordination. "All units," Hayes broadcast to forces around the world and throughout the solar system, "you are authorized to reveal true capabilities. Show them what humanity has been building." Lieutenant Jake Morrison sat in the command center of Orbital, Defense Platform Alpha, one of 12 battle stations hidden among Earth's communication satellites. For 5 years, he had maintained the fiction that his station was nothing more than a relay point for television signals. Now, as blast shields, retracted and weapon systems came online, he felt a mixture of excitement and fear. "This is Alpha Station," he reported to Earth Defense Command. "All weapon systems online, energy shields at full power, ready to engage hostile targets on your command." Similar reports came in from platforms Beta through Lambda, from submarine-launched missile systems in the Pacific, from underground installations in the Sahara Desert, from Arctic bases that weren't supposed to exist. Colonel Webb watched his tactical displays with growing horror as Earth's true military strength revealed itself. This wasn't a primitive world defending itself with chemical weapons and nuclear missiles. This was a fortress planet that had been disguised as a backward civilization. "Sir," Major Brooks reported, his voice shaking slightly, "I count over 300 major weapon installations that weren't there an hour ago. Their orbital defenses alone outgun our entire battle group." Webb realized that everything had changed. This wouldn't be a simple demonstration of power followed by inevitable surrender. This was going to be a real battle against an enemy that had been preparing for war longer than he had been alive, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy exactly what they had learned from 73 years of preparation. Colonel Webb paced across his bridge like a caged animal. The tactical displays showed Earth's hidden weapons continuing to emerge from their hiding places. Every minute brought new surprises as more installations revealed themselves. His confidence, from just hours earlier, had turned to growing concern. "Sir, Admiral Thane is requesting an immediate status update," reported Lieutenant Hayes from her communication station. Webb stopped pacing. He knew he had to make a decision. The Dominion way was to show overwhelming force when faced with resistance. A quick demonstration usually convinced even the most stubborn species to surrender. "Open a channel to the Admiral," Webb ordered. "Admiral." Thane's image appeared on the main screen, his 4 eyes showing irritation. "Colonel, explain these energy readings we are detecting. Our long-range sensors are picking up massive power sources across the human planet." "Sir, it appears the humans have been hiding their true military capabilities," Webb admitted. "However, I believe a standard demonstration will still achieve the desired result. Their technology may be more advanced than initially assessed, but it cannot match Dominion firepower." Thane considered this. "Very well, proceed with intimidation protocols. Target their primary military installations. Make it clear that resistance is futile." The channel closed, leaving Webb alone with his decision. He turned to Major Brooks at the tactical station. "Select targets for demonstration bombardment. I want clean, precise strikes that will show our superiority without causing unnecessary casualties." Brooks worked at his console for several minutes, reviewing intelligence data. Sir, I recommend we target their military academy at West Point, their naval academy at Annapolis, and their Air Force academy in Colorado. These appear to be their primary officer training facilities. Excellent choices, Webb agreed. Destroying their military leadership schools will demonstrate that we can strike any target we choose. Begin the attack. The Dominion fleet moved into position above Earth. 3 heavy cruisers aligned themselves over the North American continent, their massive weapon arrays charging with deadly energy. Similar formations took position over other continents, preparing to deliver a coordinated strike that would break human resistance once and for all. On Earth, General Hayes watched the enemy fleet movements from her command center deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain. Her staff monitored every alien ship through sensors the invaders didn't know existed. The humans had been tracking Dominion movements since they entered the solar system. Ma'am, the alien fleet is moving into bombardment formation, reported Colonel Anderson. They appear to be targeting our military academies. Hayes smiled grimly. Just as we predicted they would. Signal all defense grids to prepare for engagement. Today we find out if 70 years of preparation was enough. At West Point Military Academy, the cadets and instructors went about their normal routines, unaware that death was approaching from space. The academy looked exactly like what it appeared to be, a traditional military school with historic buildings and parade grounds. What the Dominion couldn't see was the massive underground complex beneath the academy, connected to the global defense network by tunnels that stretched for hundreds of miles. West Point wasn't just a school, it was one of the most heavily fortified positions on the planet. Colonel Webb gave the order. All ships, commence bombardment. Brilliant beams of energy lanced down from the Dominion cruisers, striking their targets with the force of small nuclear weapons. The attacks were precise and devastating, designed to vaporize entire city blocks while leaving the surrounding areas intact. The energy beams struck West Point with tremendous force, creating a mushroom cloud that rose high into the sky. Similar explosions bloomed over Annapolis and Colorado Springs as the other targets were hit. From space, it looked like a complete success. Direct hits on all targets, reported Major Brooks. Estimated damage is total destruction of primary structures. Webb nodded with satisfaction. Signal the human leadership. Tell them this is what happens to those who resist the Dominion. Their military schools are gone. Their officer corps is crippled. Surrender now and prevent further destruction. But, as the smoke cleared from the attack site, something unexpected happened. Instead of panicked surrender broadcasts, Earth's response came in the form of weapons fire. Hidden railgun installations emerged from the mountains surrounding each target zone. These massive weapons had been built into the landscape itself, disguised as natural rock formations. When they fired, they sent projectiles the size of telephone poles screaming into space at incredible velocities. The first salvo caught the Dominion fleet completely by surprise. The heavy cruiser positioned over West Point took 3 direct hits to its main hull. Its shields, designed to stop energy weapons, offered little protection against solid projectiles moving at significant fractions of the speed of light. Shields, down to 30%. Brooks shouted over the alarm klaxons that had begun blaring across the bridge. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 7. We are taking heavy damage. Webb stared at his tactical display in disbelief. The human weapons were primitive kinetic projectiles, but they were hitting with the force of antimatter bombs. How are they achieving these velocities with chemical propulsion? Sir, these aren't chemical weapons, Brooks replied, his voice tight with stress. Energy readings suggest some kind of electromagnetic acceleration system. They are using railgun technology we thought was beyond their capabilities. More projectiles streaked up from Earth's surface, not just from the areas they had attacked, but from dozens of hidden installations around the globe. Mountain ranges that had appeared empty on their scans were revealing themselves to be massive weapon emplacements. Major Lisa Thompson coordinated the counterattack from her position inside NORAD's Hidden Combat Center. The facility had been built during the Cold War, but it had been upgraded with technology that wouldn't be developed by most species for centuries. All railgun batteries, you are authorized for rapid fire, Thompson announced. Show them what human engineering can accomplish. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of projectiles launched simultaneously from positions across 6 continents. The attack was coordinated with split-second precision, timed so that all rounds would arrive at their targets within moments of each other. Lieutenant Jake Morrison watched from Orbital Defense Platform Alpha as the railgun rounds streaked past his position. His platform had also revealed its true nature, extending weapon arrays and defensive screens that had been hidden behind false panels for years. Alpha Station to Earth Control, Morrison reported. We have clear shots on multiple enemy vessels. Request permission to engage. Permission granted, Alpha Station, came General Hayes's voice over the communication system. All orbital platforms are weapons-free. Engage at will. The 12 orbital defense platforms opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams that rivaled Dominion weapons in power and far exceeded them in accuracy struck the alien fleet from multiple angles. What had appeared to be simple communication satellites transformed into heavily armed battle stations. Admiral Thane watched from his flagship as his carefully planned demonstration turned into a disaster. 3 of his cruisers were heavily damaged, and more human weapons were revealing themselves every minute. How many hidden installations do they have? He demanded. Commander Willis worked frantically at his sensor station. Sir, we are detecting new weapon signatures every few seconds. It appears the entire planet has been turned into a fortress. On Earth, the targets that had been hit by Dominion bombardment were already responding. The underground complexes beneath, the military academies had absorbed the alien attacks with minimal damage. Emergency systems activated, clearing debris and restoring communications within minutes of the strikes. West Point to Earth Control, came a voice over the communication network. Cosmetic damage to surface structures only. All primary systems operational, ready to continue engagement. Similar reports came from the other targeted locations. The Dominion had succeeded in destroying some buildings and creating impressive explosions, but they had failed to damage any critical military assets. Colonel Webb realized that his demonstration of power had become something else entirely. Instead of showing the humans the futility of resistance, he had revealed the true strength of Earth's defenses. The primitives he had expected to surrender in terror were fighting back with weapons that matched his own. Sir, Major Brooks reported, his voice filled with worry. Long-range sensors are detecting movement throughout their solar system. They appear to have additional assets we haven't identified yet. Webb looked at the tactical display and felt something he had never experienced in his military career: fear. The simple training exercise he had been assigned was turning into the fight of his life, and the humans were just getting started. The battle for Earth had begun, and nothing would ever be the same for either species. The space around Earth had become a battlefield unlike anything in Dominion history. Explosions lit up the darkness as human railgun rounds found their marks and alien energy weapons returned fire. Colonel Webb's fleet was taking heavy damage, but the true scope of humanity's deception was only beginning to reveal itself. Sir, we have multiple contacts approaching from the outer system, Major Brooks reported, his voice strained with disbelief. At least 50 vessels moving at high velocity toward our position. Webb rushed to the tactical display. New contacts were indeed approaching, but these weren't the primitive chemical rockets Earth was supposed to possess. These ships moved with the smooth acceleration curves of advanced propulsion systems. Impossible, Webb muttered. Where did they come from? The answer came from Admiral Thane aboard the flagship. Colonel, our deep space sensors are detecting a massive fleet that was somehow hidden behind the gas giant they call Jupiter. How did we miss an entire battle fleet? Captain David Anderson commanded the lead ship of Earth's hidden fleet, the battleship Washington. For 10 years he had maintained position in the shadow of Jupiter, along with 49 other vessels waiting for this moment. The ships had been built in secret shipyards on the dark side of Earth's moon, using technology that officially didn't exist. All ships, this is Anderson, he broadcast to his fleet. We have waited long enough. Time to show these invaders what human engineering can do. Attack Formation Delta. Engage at will. The human fleet broke from their hiding places throughout the solar system. Ships emerged from behind asteroids, rose from the surfaces of dead moons, and detached from what the Dominion had assumed were mining stations. Each vessel bore weapons that had been designed specifically to fight enemies with superior technology. On Earth, Dr. Robert Kim sat in his laboratory deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, monitoring the battle through quantum communication links. As the head of the Xenotechnology Research Division, he had spent 30 years studying every piece of alien technology that had fallen into human hands. The electromagnetic pulse weapons are performing better than expected, he reported to General Hayes. Enemy shields are designed to stop energy weapons, but our kinetic projectiles are punching right through. Hayes nodded from her command position. What about their armor? Standard Dominion hull plating, Kim replied with satisfaction. We have been studying their construction techniques for decades. Every weakness has been mapped and exploited. The truth was becoming clear to the alien forces. Earth had never been unprepared for invasion. The constant wars that Dominion intelligence had observed weren't signs of a primitive civilization. They were training exercises. The divided governments weren't evidence of weakness. They were a carefully maintained disguise hiding the most unified military effort in galactic history. Colonel Webb finally understood what had happened. They knew, he said quietly. They knew we were coming. Sir? Major Brooks asked. They knew we were coming, Webb repeated louder. This entire planet is a trap. Every assessment we made was wrong because they wanted us to be wrong. The evidence was overwhelming. The primitive technology readings had been falsified. The fractured governments were an act. The barbaric warfare was actually the most sophisticated military training program ever developed. Earth hadn't stumbled into the galactic community unprepared. They had been listening and learning for decades. Lieutenant Morrison aboard orbital platform Alpha watched as more human assets revealed themselves. Space stations that had appeared to be simple research facilities extended massive weapon arrays. Mining ships in the asteroid belt turned out to be disguised warships. Even civilian cargo vessels began broadcasting military identification codes. Alpha, station to all human forces, Morrison announced. We have the enemy fleet surrounded. They have nowhere to run. This was the moment General Hayes had been planning for since she was a young lieutenant. Every promotion, every assignment, every decision in her career had been building toward this day. Earth's military hadn't just prepared for alien invasion. They had prepared to win. Signal all units, Hayes ordered. Begin Phase 2 operations. Show them what happens when you underestimate humanity. Phase 2 was the revelation of Earth's true technological capabilities. For 70 years, human scientists had been reverse engineering every piece of alien technology they could find. Crashed probes, intercepted communications, debris from ancient battles. Everything the galaxy had carelessly left behind had been studied and improved upon. The orbital platforms revealed weapons that surpassed Dominion, technology through pure human innovation, railguns that could punch through any known armor, energy shields generated by principles the aliens had never discovered, stealth systems that made entire fleets invisible to conventional sensors. Colonel Webb watched his tactical display as his fleet was systematically dismantled by an enemy that should have surrendered hours ago. How long have they been planning this? The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Kim had hacked into the Dominion communication network using codes that had been broken decades earlier. His voice came through the alien ship's speakers with crystal clarity. Since 1947, Kim announced to the shocked bridge crew. When your first scout probe entered our solar system, we detected it. We have been preparing for this day for 73 years. The revelation hit Webb like a physical blow. Everything his species believed about human development was wrong. The technological assessments, the cultural analysis, the military capabilities, all of it had been carefully constructed lies designed to lure the Dominion into exactly this situation. We studied every species you conquered. Kim continued his broadcast to the alien fleet. Every distress signal you thought you had silenced reached our listening posts. We learned from every mistake, every failed defense, every tactical error that led to defeat. You taught us exactly how to destroy you. Major Brooks looked up from his damaged console. Sir, We are receiving surrender demands from the humans." Webb almost laughed at the absurdity. The prey had become the predator. The simple training exercise had become a fight for survival against the most dangerous enemy the Dominion had ever faced. "Put it through," Webb ordered. General Hayes appeared on the main screen, her face calm and professional. "Dominion forces, this is General Patricia Hayes, Earth Defense Command. You are completely surrounded and outgunned. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in the destruction of your fleet." "You cannot be serious," Webb replied. "We are the Dominion. We have conquered 1,000 worlds." Hayes smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "And we have been listening to the screams of every one of those worlds. Their deaths taught us how to kill you." The space battle continued around them, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Human ships moved with precision and purpose, while the Dominion fleet fought desperately to survive. Advanced alien technology was being defeated by human innovation and decades of careful preparation. "Sir, the flagship is signaling retreat," Brooks reported. Webb knew it was too late. Earth's fleet had them surrounded. Their stealth ships had cut off every escape route. The trap had been perfectly executed, and there was no way out. For the first time in Dominion history, an invasion fleet was going to be completely destroyed by the species they had come to conquer. And humanity was just beginning to show the galaxy what they were truly capable of. Colonel Webb watched his fleet being torn apart by human weapons, but he wasn't ready to surrender. The Dominion had rules for situations like this. When space superiority was lost, the next step was ground invasion. His transport ships still carried 20,000 of the galaxy's finest assault troops. "Major Brooks, signal the troop transports," Webb ordered. "Begin planetary assault operations immediately." Brooks looked uncertain. "Sir, with respect, our fleet is taking heavy casualties. Perhaps we should consider Admiral Thane's retreat." "Order." "Negative," Webb replied firmly. "Dominion doctrine is clear. We do not retreat from primitive worlds. Our ground forces have never failed to secure victory once deployed." The decision was made. Across the remaining Dominion ships, assault troops prepared for combat. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were the elite forces of a galactic empire, equipped with personal energy weapons, powered armor, and decades of experience conquering worlds. Captain Rex Miller commanded the 1st Assault Battalion aboard the transport ship Thunder of War. He had led successful invasions on 15 different planets. In his experience, ground combat was always easier than space battles. Primitive species might get lucky with hidden weapons in orbit, but they never knew how to fight real soldiers on the ground. "Listen up, people," Miller announced to his troops. "The space battle isn't going as planned, but that doesn't matter. Once we hit the surface, this becomes our kind of fight. These humans have never faced Dominion assault troops." The soldiers cheered. They wore black armor that could stop most. Primitive weapons. Carried energy rifles that could burn through solid steel and had been trained to fight in any environment. They were confident that no matter how clever the humans had been in space, ground combat would be different. The drop pods launched from the surviving transport ships like a metal rain falling toward Earth. Each pod contained a squad of elite troops with enough firepower to level city blocks. The pods were designed to punch through any defense and deliver soldiers directly into enemy territory. On Earth, Major Lisa Thompson watched the incoming pods from her command center inside NORAD. She had been waiting for this moment just as long as everyone else. While the Space Forces handled the fleet battle, ground defense was her responsibility. "All ground units, this is Thompson," she announced on the military communication network. "Enemy troops are inbound. Remember your training. Remember what we planned for. Today we show them that Earth doesn't just have good pilots and engineers." The drop pods streaked through Earth's atmosphere, their heat shields glowing orange from the friction. Most primitive worlds couldn't stop this kind of assault. The pods were too fast for primitive weapons to target, and they landed in too many different places for defenders to stop them all. But Earth wasn't like other worlds. As the pods descended, hidden surface-to-air installations revealed themselves. Missiles that had been disguised as cell phone towers and radio antennas launched toward the incoming threats. Many pods were destroyed before they could land. erupting in brilliant fireballs high above the surface. The pods that did make it to the ground landed in what appeared to be major population centers: New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, London, Tokyo, and dozens of other cities received their uninvited visitors. The Dominion strategy was simple: land in civilian areas where the humans wouldn't dare use heavy weapons, then advance toward military targets. Captain Miller's pod crashed into downtown Chicago with tremendous force, creating a crater in the middle of State Street. The pod's sides exploded outward, and Miller led his squad into what he expected to be a city full of terrified civilians running for safety. Instead, he found himself in a carefully prepared killing zone. The buildings around the landing site had been evacuated hours earlier, but they hadn't been abandoned. Windows that appeared empty suddenly erupted with gunfire, not the primitive chemical weapons the Dominion expected, but energy weapons that matched their own technology. "Contact front," Miller shouted into his radio. "Taking heavy fire from multiple positions. These aren't civilians with hunting rifles, they have military-grade energy weapons." The response came from Sergeant First Class Michael Davis, who was positioned on the 20th floor of a nearby office building. Davis had been born in Chicago, had grown up on these very streets, and had spent the last 8 years training for exactly this scenario. "Welcome to Earth," Davis muttered as he lined up another shot with his plasma rifle. The weapon was built using technology reverse-engineered from Dominion equipment, but improved with human engineering. It hit harder and fired faster than anything the aliens carried. All across the landing zones, similar scenes played out. The alien troops found themselves fighting not panicked civilians, but organized military units that knew the terrain perfectly and had been preparing for urban warfare for decades. Staff Sergeant Jennifer Miller coordinated resistance efforts in Los Angeles from her position in an underground command bunker that connected to the city's subway system. The tunnels had been modified over the years to serve as a massive network of defensive positions. "Squad leaders, report in," Miller announced. "Second squad here," came a voice over the radio. "We have aliens pinned down in Pershing Square. They're trying to advance toward the financial district, but we have them covered from 3 directions." "Fifth squad reporting," said another voice. "Enemy forces at LAX are taking heavy casualties. They seem surprised that our airport security isn't just guys with badges and radios." Miller smiled grimly. Every major city had spent decades preparing for exactly this kind of invasion. The civilian population had been trained in evacuation procedures. The police and National Guard had been quietly equipped with advanced weapons. Even the infrastructure had been modified to serve defensive purposes. Captain Miller's confidence began to evaporate as his assault force took casualties. These humans weren't running away in terror. They were fighting back with weapons and tactics that were far more sophisticated than intelligence had indicated. "Command, this is Miller," he reported to the orbiting ships. "We need immediate reinforcement. The enemy is better equipped and organized than expected. We are taking significant casualties." The response came from Colonel Webb, whose own situation was becoming increasingly desperate as the space battle continued to go badly. "Negative, Miller. All reserve forces are committed. You will have to complete your mission with current assets." Miller looked around at the urban battlefield that had become his nightmare. Every street corner held hidden defenders. Every building provided cover for human soldiers who seemed to know exactly where his troops would be. The city had been turned into a 3-dimensional maze designed to trap and destroy invaders. "Sir," reported one of his squad leaders, "the humans appear to be using the sewer system for rapid movement. We clear a building and 10 minutes later it's reoccupied by fresh troops." This was something the Dominion had never encountered. Most species fought desperately but clumsily when invaded. They made emotional decisions and wasted their forces in hopeless charges. The humans were doing the opposite. They were fighting, with cold precision, using every advantage the terrain provided. In New York, similar urban warfare was taking place among the skyscrapers of Manhattan. Dominion troops found themselves fighting an enemy that used the subway tunnels, office buildings, and even the sewers as part of an integrated defense network. Lieutenant Colonel James Wilson coordinated the New York defense from his command post beneath Grand Central Station. The facility had been built to look like a simple maintenance area, but it was actually one of the most sophisticated command centers on the planet. Enemy forces are concentrating around Times Square, reported one of his officers. They seem to be trying to establish a secure landing zone for additional reinforcements. Denied, Wilson replied. Signal the artillery units. Time to show them what American firepower looks like. Hidden gun positions that had been disguised as construction sites and utility buildings revealed their true nature. Artillery pieces that could have leveled entire city blocks began firing with surgical precision. The shells weren't aimed at buildings or civilian areas. They were targeted specifically at the alien landing zones. Captain Miller watched in horror as his secured areas came under bombardment from weapons that shouldn't exist. The humans were using their own cities as battlefields, showing a ruthless determination to win that the Dominion had never encountered. These people are insane, one of his soldiers commented over the radio. They're shelling their own city to get at us. Miller was beginning to understand something that would have terrified Colonel Webb if he had known. The humans weren't just willing to fight for their world. They were willing to pay any price to win. They had turned their entire civilization into a weapon, and every citizen was a potential soldier. The ground invasion that was supposed to secure victory for the Dominion was turning into the same kind of disaster as the space battle. Everywhere the alien troops landed, they found prepared defenses and determined resistance, and humanity was still holding back most of their strength for the final phase of the battle. The final battle for Earth raged across multiple fronts as the last of the Dominion fleet fought desperately to survive. Admiral Thane stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, watching his carefully planned invasion collapse into complete disaster. Sir, we have lost contact with 70% of our ground forces, Commander Willis reported. The surviving units are requesting immediate evacuation. Thane studied the tactical display with growing despair. Of the 67 ships he had brought to Earth, only 12 remained combat effective. The humans had revealed military capabilities that surpassed Dominion technology in almost every category. How is this possible? Thane asked aloud. They were supposed to be primitives. Our intelligence reports were comprehensive. The answer came through an open communication channel that the humans had established. General Hayes appeared on every screen throughout the Dominion fleet. Her image transmitted simultaneously to every surviving alien ship. Admiral Thane, Hayes began, I believe you have some questions about how we prepared for your arrival. Thane straightened his uniform and tried to project authority, despite his desperate situation. You cannot hope to defeat the entire Dominion. We are just the first wave. Hayes smiled, and the expression sent chills through every alien who saw it. We're counting on that. You see, Admiral, you've made a critical error in understanding what humanity truly is. On Earth, the final phase of the defense plan was beginning. All across the planet, installations that had remained hidden even during the main battle began to reveal themselves. These weren't just weapons. They were shipyards, factories, and training facilities that had been building an interstellar war machine for 7 decades. Dr. Robert Kim appeared beside General Hayes on the transmission. Allow me to explain, Admiral. When your first probe entered our solar system in 1947, it wasn't destroyed by accident. We shot it down deliberately, then spent months studying its technology. The revelation hit Thane like a physical blow. Earth had been aware of the Dominion for 73 years, and had spent every day of that time preparing for war. Every species you conquered sent out distress signals before you silenced them, Kim continued. We received every transmission. We studied every battle record. We learned from every species that fell to your empire. You taught us how to defeat you by showing us how you defeated everyone else. Colonel Webb, his own ship now drifting powerless after taking multiple hits, listened to the broadcast from his damaged bridge. The scope of human deception was beyond anything he could have imagined. The constant warfare you observed wasn't primitive barbarism, Hayes explained. It was the most sophisticated military training program in galactic history. Every conflict, every battle, every tactical exercise was designed to prepare us for fighting an enemy with superior technology. Major Lisa Thompson coordinated the final ground operations from her command center. Around the world, the surviving alien troops were being systematically eliminated by forces that seemed to emerge from nowhere. Every civilian evacuation had actually been the deployment of hidden military units. All ground units, this is Thompson, she announced. Begin Phase 3 operations. Show them what a mobilized humanity looks like. Phase 3 was the revelation that Earth's entire civilian population was actually a reserve military force. The factory workers were trained soldiers. The teachers were intelligence operatives. The farmers knew how to operate advanced weapon systems. Every human citizen was a potential combatant in the defense of their world. Captain Miller, trapped in downtown Chicago with the remnants of his assault force, watched in amazement as ordinary-looking humans emerged from buildings carrying military equipment. These weren't soldiers. They were shopkeepers and office workers and students who had transformed into a coordinated fighting force. "This is impossible," Miller muttered into his radio. "An entire species cannot be militarized to this degree." The response came from Sergeant Davis, who had been born and raised in this very neighborhood. "You're right, alien, we're not militarized. We're something much more dangerous. We're unified." The truth was that humanity had achieved something no other species in galactic history had accomplished. They had turned their entire civilization into a single military unit, without losing their individual identity or freedom. Every human understood the threat, and had willingly participated in the defense preparations. Admiral Thane made one final desperate attempt to salvage something from the disaster. "General Hayes, even if you defeat our fleet, the Dominion will send larger forces. You cannot stand against the entire galaxy." Hayes exchanged glances with Kim, and both humans smiled. "Admiral, you still don't understand what you're dealing with. Show him, Doctor." Kim activated a holographic display that appeared throughout the Dominion fleet. It showed star charts of the local galactic region, but with details that made every alien officer gasp in shock. "These are the positions of Earth's deep space assets," Kim explained. "While you were watching our planet, we were exploring yours. We have monitoring stations in 37 star systems. We have identified the locations of your major fleet bases, your industrial centers, and your homeworld." The implications hit the aliens like a thunderbolt. Earth hadn't just been preparing to defend against invasion. They had been preparing to take the war to the Dominion. "For 70 years, we have been building the most advanced interstellar fleet in galactic history," Hayes continued. "Hidden shipyards throughout our solar system have constructed over 2,000 warships. Every piece of Dominion technology has been studied, improved upon, and integrated into weapon systems designed specifically to destroy your empire." Colonel Webb finally found his voice. "You're talking about a war of extermination." "No," Hayes replied firmly. "We're talking about justice. Every world you conquered deserves to be free. Every species you enslaved deserves liberation. Earth isn't just defending itself. We're going to liberate the galaxy from your tyranny." Captain Anderson, commanding the human battleship Washington, received new orders from Earth. "All ships prepare for pursuit operations. The enemy fleet is broken. Time to ensure none of them escape to warn their masters." The human fleet moved with deadly precision, surrounding the surviving Dominion vessels. Advanced stealth ships that had remained hidden throughout the battle revealed themselves, cutting off every possible escape route. Admiral Thane realized that his invasion force wasn't just defeated. It was about to be completely annihilated. No survivors would return to warn the Dominion about Earth's true capabilities. "General Hayes," Thane said quietly, "if we cannot return, how will our people know what happened here?" Hayes studied the alien admiral for a moment before responding. "They'll know, Admiral, because we're going to tell them personally." The final phase of Earth's defense wasn't defense at all. It was the launch of humanity's first interstellar offensive. Hidden shipyards throughout the solar system began releasing vessels that had been under construction for decades. The fleet that emerged from concealment dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Kim made one final broadcast to the galaxy, transmitted on all known Dominion frequencies. "This is Earth. We know you're listening. We know what you've done to countless innocent worlds. Consider this your only warning. Humanity is no longer hiding. We have studied your weaknesses, learned from your victims, and built weapons, specifically designed to destroy your empire. You came to our world expecting to find primitives. Instead, you found warriors who have been waiting 70 years for this moment. The transmission continued as human ships began jumping to hyperspace, carrying the fight directly to Dominion space. Every world you have conquered will be liberated. Every species you have enslaved will be free. This is not a threat. This is a promise. General Hayes watched the last alien ship explode on her tactical display, then turned to her staff. Signal. All fleet commanders. Operation Homecoming is authorized. Time to return these criminals to their masters. As the human fleet departed Earth for the first time, bound for targets throughout Dominion space, the galaxy began to understand a terrible truth about the species they had dismissed as primitive barbarians. Humanity hadn't just survived their first contact with a hostile alien empire. They had turned it into the opening move of a war that would reshape the galaxy forever. Earth had been dismissed as a simple exercise. But when the drop troopers fell from the sky, they discovered that sometimes the prey becomes the predator, and humanity was just beginning to show the galaxy what they had learned from 73 years of preparation for this exact moment. The age of Dominion rule was ending. The age of human liberation had begun.